This is the Pro Perspective from House Pro, where home builders, designers, and industry experts share their views on running a modern firm.
In today's episode of the Pro Perspective, I'm speaking to Luke Thomas, CEO of H&L Design Build in Rochester, New York, about rebranding blue collar, the potency of purpose, and how he builds business momentum. Join us today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Pro Perspective. I'm Liza Hausman, and today I have the privilege of speaking to Luke Thomas, CEO of H&L Design Build in Rochester, New York, about a pretty ambitious topic, that is rebranding blue collar in a culture of instant gratification. So welcome to the podcast, Luke.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really good to get to know you, although it's been brief. I feel like you've got some great energy and you're contributing to a great product that honestly has just changed my life. I feel like it's like a multi-level marketing thing. It's not, but it's like it's changed my life. So I'm glad you're here.
You're fun. The feeling is mutual, and I appreciate you bringing your energy to this today, as I said when we first jumped on. So before we dive into this kind of maybe controversial and meaty topic, tell me and tell our audience a little bit about your business.
Sure. So specifically H&L, my wife's name is Hannah. My name is Luke, as previously said. So I've gained a little bit of wisdom in my 44 years, and we put her first. So it's H&L Design Build, and we thought we'd be a little bit of a Chip and Joanna Gaines duo. She has an eye for design, making everything pretty, and I seem to have the uncanny ability to put things together. So Design Build, we really wanted to be all inclusive. I'm a recovering control freak, so I like to control the process, the quality, the materials. I have very strong opinions about building materials, building systems, all those kinds of things. So we really wanted to be in control of everything. So we do all phases of construction and a high level of customer experience from concept to completion, from, every single phase of construction we did and we currently do. So we've grown quite a bit over the last 4 years that we've been in business, a little over 3 years. And now we have 12 in the field. We have 4 designers, myself and a production manager, all doing residential remodeling, kitchens, baths, additions, those kinds of things. Hope is to build custom homes someday. And I've got another new crazy idea. I know it's only been a week since we spoke previously, but high-end flips is a new idea that I'm playing around with. I know it's not completely unique, but it is in our area.
Love it. So you have a ton of passion for this space, but you also have a passion to rebrand blue collar talent and the work that you do. Can you tell me a little, and tell everybody a little bit about why that is? Where does that passion come from?
It's a great question. I'm glad that you asked where it comes from. And without getting too in the weeds, the way I grew up, my father started at a tool and die manufacturing. He went to trade school right out of high school. And then he started at the bottom of the ladder at a manufacturing and engineering firm. And he was running a machine and doing parts and working on tight tolerances. And he worked his way up the ladder through hard work and through applying himself mentally and studying, old school books and manuals at night. And as a small kid, I got to see that at the kitchen table. And in addition to that, we grew up on a bit of a pseudo farm. My dad built our barn and did lots of home improvements around. And for my brother and I, my dad was very quick to put a screwdriver in our hand when we were 2 and a circular saw by the time we were 6. And he allowed us to dabble to an extent that my brother and I felt capable of doing anything, even if we weren't yet competent. And he continued to train us and involve us, and we felt comfortable around a job site. And it really gave me passion and respect for the blue collar. My dad worked his way up to management, started running the manufacturing and engineering portion of the firm. Both of my grandfathers were blue collar, both served in the war. So I just had this real strong attachment to these great masculine role models in my life as people who loved and served their family, loved and served their community, and worked hard with their hands to give back to people that maybe they would never meet. And so carrying that into college was a utter failure. I went to college for architecture, and for me, it wasn't attached to the people. It wasn't attached to the humanity, and nothing against academics, but it was very academic, and I lost the passion in it. My grades suffered. My parents pulled me from school because I failed out. I tried another stint at a community college, but it wasn't, I couldn't use my hands and I couldn't see it affecting humans. So I was just not interested. Got out of that, and my dad got me a job at a granite fabrication company, and I made countertops and installed countertops and got to meet the family and the pets and the kids and watch people come alive to these new solid surface countertops as just a small portion of their remodel. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, like they're gonna cook meals here and have Thanksgiving, and it was just, it attached it to the human experience, what I was getting to do with my hands. That was really, really exciting. Had a kind of a bit of a weird twist of events and did 20 years in nonprofit. And now I'm back in the trades.
In the trades. Well, it's clear where your passion came from, and I just have to note that we're um, recording this the day after Father's Day, and it feels like a really appropriate time to have this nice tribute to your father and your grandfather and the way that they made you feel capable. I think maybe the interesting twist before we get to some of your other twists is that while you feel passionate about it, you still think that the stigma associated with our industry and with many contractors and the construction process is warranted. So, why is that?
Yeah, it is warranted. And I think maybe different than the men that I grew up with. There is an accurate stigma with plenty of examples that go back decades of that blue collar chuck in a truck, hungover from the night before, smelling like cigarettes, dirty boots walking around your house, overcharging you for a part that you can't explain and he says he has to go get, and a process that's unfamiliar. And the whole time you feel like you're at risk or you're being fleeced for way more money than it should cost. Now, all stigmas and stereotypes come from somewhere, even though they're all inaccurate. So, where did that come from? Well, it came from enough examples that culture and a large portion of culture believe those things are true. And then they're honestly intimidated to get into a renovation or a remodeling or a building project of their own because they feel like it's going to be a necessary nightmare until it's over. And it's a bit of a race to the bottom in a lot of our industry, unfortunately. And this month in June, when we're recording this, is also Men's Mental Health Month. And I think the dark side of that is not only is it a race to the bottom, blue collar men, they can only rise to the level of society's expectations of them. And if the expectation is low, why rise above it? If you're looked down upon, it takes a whole lot to lift your head up and to believe that you're worth more and to believe that you have skills that are marketable and valuable and your experience has worth to it and those kinds of things. So it's a little bit of a messy thing, the psychology of the blue collar. And of course, there's a spectrum within. There's idealists, overly optimistic like myself, which gets me in trouble. And then there is this low, insecure, full of depression and depravity. And within that spectrum is blue collar. And depending on your personal experience or your uncles or your grandmothers or your moms or the neighbors, you assume that all of it is at one point or another in that spectrum, when you might be thinking about having that for your own project in your own home.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because these projects are not super common for any one person, right? So one experience can really color your perception. It's not something that you're doing day in and day out, so that you know that there's sort of a wide range of experiences. But I think you also see and practice a very different way of doing things. I guess when you think about blue collar, why do you think it's justified to raise society's view of what blue collar, and especially in our industry, does.
I mean, it really doesn't take long to look around with curiosity and an open mind to see that everything tangible was created or built by blue collar. And we all get to enjoy that to one degree or another. We get to enjoy the infrastructure that's been created over the last 100 years. We get to enjoy the modern amenities. We get to enjoy the safety features. We get to enjoy the climate that's created inside of a building. We get to enjoy the hospital systems that help people be well. We get to enjoy the view from the skyscraper because engineers poured their life into that one building. Like, we get to enjoy all of those different things. They don't exist for us. I think they exist for us to thrive within. And when there's a different perspective of ownership around things, there's a little bit of collaborative and collective mindset around how do we as society work together and learn together and grow together. If you think about one of my favorite quotes ever, and you can pull me back if I'm getting off topic, but one of my favorite quotes ever, and it really freed me. We were talking about social media before we started recording. One of my favorite quotes: the human soul is village sized. Like, we were never meant to have full awareness of all of the terrible atrocities that are happening across the world. And our soul was never meant to carry the burden or responsibility of all those things. Yet there's a society that expects us to contribute and post and all these kinds of things. And what that does, unfortunately, is I think we abdicate our responsibility to our family, our friends, and our immediate community because we're overly concerned, perhaps, about some of the larger issues that we can't actually affect. Similarly, when you think about a village, you think about, okay, I'm going to honor the blacksmith because my horse needs horseshoes. And I'm going to honor the baker because I really like bread. And I'm going to sew because I'm a seamster. I'm going to sew the best clothes I can so that I can clothe the baker and I can clothe the blacksmith and I can clothe the farmer. And when we view ourselves as contributors of one another, there's no longer this class system that we think we've matured away from. But if you consider blue collar and you superimpose that onto what I just said, blue collar is seen as a lower class that just enables us to live better lives.
And I think what's sort of ironic about that is you typically have a relationship with with those people working in your house. It's not an arm's distance. I'm just contributing. Like I bought I bought a nest for my wall, right? It's a very different type of relationship. And so not only is the work that folks doing impressive and difficult, right? And something that again is built for you to thrive in or is beautiful and right is what's housing your family. But there is a deeper almost community relationship. And when it does go well, right, those are long-term relationships, right? Whether it's additional work or referrals or just actually end up with friendships, it is much more of a relationship type, structure, I
Yep.
think, than many other blue collar situations.
Absolutely. It's a very intimate, sacred type of thing. I mean, you think about your home and the memories that you have and the babies that come home, or you have the wake at your house after somebody dies, or you're serving Thanksgiving meal and there's tension around the table, or the next Thanksgiving there's celebration around the table. And as a builder, you get in a way to contribute to what houses that. And I think there's a sacredness about it. There's an impact about it. There's a meaning behind it. And that's why, in our company at H&L, we call all of our build crew, we refer to them as craftsmen. We don't refer to them just as carpenters or plumbers or electricians, although those are great trades and highly skilled guys. So the culture that we're trying to create and the language that we're using on team is you're a craftsman. And I know that we've never installed a garage door before, but we're craftsmen. So we're going to do it at a high level with a high level of customer experience. And if for some reason that door doesn't open perfectly 10 years from now, we want them to be actually excited to call us. so that we can warranty it. So it's
I,
that
I,
crafts person.
yeah, yeah, no, I love that you're saying that because I think, my next question was going to be, how do we change the perception of blue collar? And it seems like, that's even one small step that you're taking to change how your team feels about themselves, as well as how your customers, clients feel about your team.
Right. And brand and appearance matters. You can rock a mullet if you want, but you better have showered in the morning and you better not stink. Like it's not absent of style. Not everybody loves this mustache. Actually, Hannah, my wife, hates it, but I love it. So it's here for now. But if you think about blue collar versus white collar, there's an image that comes in your mind. That stereotype. You think about white collar, you think about a professional, and they're clean and well put together and they're well groomed and they smell nice and they're articulate and they can look you in the eye and they can shake your hand, and their vehicle isn't rusted and falling apart and you feel safe and comfortable around them and those kinds of things. So what we expect of our crew is that they're going to be those things, and we hire for those things. We hire character first, then we hire competence.
Mm.
And then chemistry comes easy because when you have people of similar character coming together around the same mission, chemistry is easy. So it's character and then it's competence. So we hire for character. It's more expensive. It's worth it. And the amount we spend on apparel and the amount we spend on branding and print material and all those kinds of things. Our director of design, Sarah, she says that our brand is our promise. So it's not just superfluous swag. This is who we are. What we present is who we are inside, kind of thing. And I think that's one of many ways that we can kind of counteract that stereotypical blue collar.
Makes sense. I think one of the ways you've phrased it that I really liked was that we should present ourselves so you're excited to give us the door code, right? That there's the presentation is so correlated with trust and
Yep.
building trust. I think another thing that we talked about that I liked was this idea about skills, about what are the skills that you need. So you talked about character even before competence, but I think, there's also this idea that, right, you want the trade to become even more skilled at what they do on both the competence and on the human side of things.
Yeah. And, some of the things that we encourage our team leaders is you are the main point of communication with the client. And you need to be ready to explain what you're doing, explain what's coming next, explain what you found behind the wall. Like you need to be ready for that. And we coach our guys in here's how you could best explain that. Or here's how you could approach that. Or if you need a little backup, then, call a production manager, call me, and I'll come and we'll talk to the client together. But in addition to that, it's providing the training tools more than just YouTube. It's paid subscription to training tools on skills. And it's telling the guys, hey, you're finishing up this project. This is the scope of work for the next project. We've picked out these 3 videos that we want you to watch. There's going to be a quiz at the end of the video for comprehension because I want you to just re-up your knowledge on the most modern way to install nail fin windows that are molded together. You may have done windows before, you may have done them 10 years ago, maybe did them 2 years ago, but there's some new technology that we're adopting. Here's a video. We want you to watch them prior to the next install. This is our new SOP. This is our new standard operating procedure. So it's evolving with all of the incredible technology that's coming out in building systems. And adopting those technologies, which is more expensive for me as an employer because it's not the same way that they've installed it for the last 10 years. So they're a little bit
Mm.
slower. The materials are a little bit more expensive, but we're keeping up with the building systems. Otherwise, we find ourselves 20 years behind.
I mean, it's an important investment, but I could see why it would be a scary investment for a lot of folks. But on the other hand, you know, making sure that you're not just sort of profitable, but actually, profitable to run a sustainable business is super important. And putting those things in place, it's probably mission critical to be able to charge what your work is worth.
Yeah, and I will say that what I've had to get much better at is, although my dad put a hammer in my hand, he never put a calculator in my hand. So learning the finances of business, like I'm a craftsman at heart, learning business over the last 3 years, knowing my numbers, finances, job costing, budgeting, estimating, all of that has been an extremely weak muscle. And we've lost quite a bit in the past. And we're getting much, much better at knowing our numbers. The math has got to math, because it doesn't matter how good your craftsmanship is. If you can't be profitable, you won't be able to be a craftsman for very long. And you get into this so that, you can add value over the long term. And if you don't know your numbers, you're going to find yourself out of business. So that's been building systems using software like House, understanding my labor rate, my labor burdens, my gross profit, my net profit, what is going in budgets, all of those kinds of things have become, like you said, mission critical. Otherwise, we're just doing cool projects and people seem happy, but I can't take a vacation or fill up my gas tank. Like that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think that ties into the overall professionalism. So, when you're thinking about elevating blue collar, not just yourself, right, for the industry as a whole, what are some of the things that you're doing to help lift it up?
Anybody that is willing to ask me for help, I'm willing to give them the shirt off my back, the systems that I built, the spreadsheets that I use, the chat GPT chats that I've done, all of those kinds of things, our SOPs, our call scripts, everything that all the systems and processes that we've used. I'm willing to absolutely 100% give away, because if I can shortcut someone's learning and maybe prevent them from hitting the eject button too soon, that's a huge win for me personally and my life mission, and what I feel like H&L is here for, in addition to high quality renovations and custom homes, um, is to, like Bill Gates said, if we can put a ding in this blue collar mission, I think that is a worthy pursuit. So it's things like that, giving things away. It's also, if someone's willing to call or Zoom with me and ask me questions, I'm happy to give any kind of wisdom or advice that I've learned from failing 1,000 times. So I'm starting, it's not an official consulting or anything fancy like that, but I just want to be helpful.
That's lovely. And I'm sure that there are folks out there that are very appreciative of the time that you're investing in them, I should say. I think one of the other things we talked about was just being, leading by example in terms of how you run your own business. Maybe share some of the examples of kind of what are the things that you're just hyper aware of or focused on for your own business.
Hmm. Yeah, good question. So every job site has a whiteboard and, list of priorities, maybe some materials, questions for the PM, questions for the client. It's kind of this live whiteboard. The guys haven't fully adopted digital, nor do I want to invest in iPads at this point because they're just not ready for it. So we use these whiteboards, and House uses, some task management software and daily logs and all that fun stuff. But I'm a bit anal about the cleanliness of their trailers. So I put on a job board today, third priority today, your trailer is embarrassing. And it was a little bit cheeky, but they know that I have a unnecessarily high expectation of cleanliness. One of the rules at H&L, so rule number one at H&L is don't die, because that could put us out of business and it'd be super sad. Number two is there's no number two in a client's house, because it's just gross. So go to the gas station, or if there's a porta potty on site, like, what are you doing? But the other thing is, we expect the guys to take all their tools out of the project location and put it in the trailer at the end of every night. Because what I don't want is, I don't want a little kid running around interested in one of the guys' drills. I also don't want one of the teenagers to be tempted to steal one of those really cool drills. And now we've got drama on the job site. Nor do I want injuries, those kinds of things. So there's a half an hour at the end of the day that's dedicated to clean the project site, get all your tools out in the trailer. I know you're going to bring them back out the next morning, but it matters because we know that every single client is excited to see the work that was done that day, and they walk around at night. So how much more wonderful is it to walk onto a project that is in process, but it's not filled with tools? So that's just, one of the ways that we do that.
Yeah, you're definitely focused on, right? I think a lot of the small details that lead to project success and client satisfaction. One of the things that I particularly liked when we spoke about just, the things that drive you was this idea of potency of purpose and mission. And I know this comes in part from the slightly different career path you took, I think, like, post those initial construction days. Maybe tell us a little bit about that and how that's impacted how you run your business now.
Yeah, and I think it really has because I'm very much a people-centered person. I say often that I think one of the best equations in business is a desired outcome equals people over systems. A lot of times we build our systems and then we make our people subservient to the system, and it makes them feel small, and it doesn't cause them to be great. And I think I get that from my 20 years in nonprofit church work, and where it was mostly volunteer teams, and we were surrounding a noble, wonderful, human-centered mission for the benefit of people, regardless of where they came from or how broken they may seem. They were extremely precious, and our job is to come alongside them and build them up and encourage them and help reveal in them what they could be great at and how they could be great contributors, and how they in turn could soon become part of a group that then did that for others. And so, mission, purpose was huge and continues to be. In my prior career, I was a student of leadership, a student of scripture, and I got my master's degree in theological studies, and I had the opportunity to speak publicly. The 10,000 hour rule. It's not just the gift of gab that my grandmother said I had. I actually have the hours that has made it hopefully better, but it provided the experience to be able to speak into people, culture, the greatness inside each and every person, and the value of every single person. So when we get on a job site, we do a pre-build meeting, and it's about a week prior to the project starting, where we bring the build crew and the clients and the designer and myself and the production manager, and it's just a meet and greet. It's, hey, this is Jesse. Here's his history. He used to be one of my youth when I was a youth pastor, and he's this incredible framer now, and he's been building custom homes and this and that, and now he's on the team, and this is Dominic, and here's the pets, and here's the kids, and we have a good laugh, and there's camaraderie that's built even before the boots hit the ground and the trailer is parked. It sets the tone for, hey, we're people, you're people, we're going to do our best, you're doing our best. You're trusting us in your home. We want to be transparent. This is going to be a great partnership. When you see us in your backyard building the addition, or we knock on your front door and we go into the kitchen behind the plastic, you can trust that it's Jesse and it's Dom, and the dog doesn't bark anymore, and the kids can't wait to get off the bus and say hello to Jesse and Dom. And we drop off cookies when the project is complete, and they got little H&L logos on them, and we hand them to the kids, and we bring the dog treats, and sometimes we scoop up the poop from the dog, and we become an integrated part of that family, and we share humanity together while we're in that project space. And not only does it make us, I think, better than most as far as a client experience, I think it leaves some of the best parts of us, it leaves behind in that home. And I think everybody desires to live a legacy. And I think that is broader than maybe our children. I think it's our contribution throughout our working lives as well. So to be able to speak that to the company culture, to be able to encourage the homeowners with that's kind of how we operate, it's how we behave. I think it makes a bigger impact.
It's definitely part of your brand, right? And how you're what you're communicating at all of your touch points, right? Including the in person, which shouldn't be underestimated.
Right.
The people skills that you have and that you're shaping on your team, I think that's sort of a useful segue into the next area that I wanted to ask you about. You recently spoke at the Fast Remodeler Conference. It sounds like it was a super interesting experience. What did you talk about there? What kind of feedback did you get?
Yeah, the Fast Remodeler Conference, I felt like I was a very tiny fish in a big old ocean. There were some incredible builders and industry leaders there. So it was a humbling and honoring experience to be there. I spoke about how there's a societal expectation for speed and transparency. Someone who studies it more so would be able to be more specific, but I think in our Amazon expectation, it has influenced every other area of expectation in us as people. You think about Amazon, and I can order something today and it'll be delivered tonight. That's unbelievable. Ask one of your grandparents about that. They'll be like, that's witchcraft. Like, no, how is that even possible? Not only that, I can practically track the truck that has my
Right.
package on it. And then it's a little creepy, but they'll send me a picture at 2 a.m. on my doorstep of the package while I'm sleeping. Like we've gotten to another level. But as a result of that being the new normal, there is a new expectation that has been imposed, I think, on just about every industry for timeliness, transparency, financial transparency, speed, communication, all of those kinds of things. So I shared this example at the FAST conference, but my in-laws, about 6 years ago, they put a $230,000 addition onto their house. Granted, the contractor was kind of like a loose family friend by association. He gave them their estimate on a piece of yellow legal pad, and it just said 2,200 square foot addition, $220,000. For whatever reason, they said yes, and it's fine and it's great. But that was 6 years ago, which was still crazy back then. But can you imagine that now? Not a chance. Now, it needs to be line itemed and what products are you going to be using and how many screws. And, there's a new client expectation, which is difficult. However, I think it can accelerate that rebranding of blue collar because the new expectation is going to weed out builders, remodelers, handymen that aren't willing to do that. They're not willing to put in the work, or they don't have a pricing structure, or they don't have the admin skills, or they just have a bad attitude about it. It's going to weed them out, and it's going to allow professionally minded people with integrity to show themselves as trustworthy because of the amount of transparency that is now required. So it's challenging, but in the end, I think it's really, really good for our industry, the new expectation.
I think that's interesting because basically suggesting that folks are either going to have to step up or they're not going to survive, or they're going to have to change how they see themselves and want to change how they see themselves and how others see them in order to be successful kind of in this next, in the new deal to be successful today and tomorrow, right? Using the way that you worked, 5, 10 years ago just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, I think so. The interesting thing that will be to see over the next 10 years, that truth that you just summarized so well, plus the truth that there is an extreme labor shortage in our industry. So the demand is not only high, the expectations that we just talked about are high, yet the supply is extremely low. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's two major groups within our industry of builders and remodelers, and maybe there's going to be more and more separation between them, is my prediction. And we need to choose now which group we want to be in.
Although if you read the news on, sort of the dire straits for college graduates these days and how so much of the, entry level job market is going away, we might start to see more of a shift towards the things that, AI can't replace, and see more people coming back into these types of jobs. Maybe they don't intend to go for the job satisfaction, but like you will probably end up with a much, the better place to be maybe than they thought
Yeah.
they would end up.
And that, I'm really, really excited about the young people that are considering the trades for whatever reason. And again, that's why I think we need to bring a bit of nobility back to the trades. If we go back to obviously worse times for humanity, but if you think about, back 1,000 years ago, the blacksmith was a noble trade, and the baker was a noble trade, and the cobbler was a noble trade because they were seen as necessary and celebrated and revered in a way. And I think, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if we can get that back a little bit.
I hope so. I know one of the things we talked about was as an owner, right, to kind of get there, you had to shift from just working in the business to working on the business. Maybe talk a little bit about that as sort of a piece of elevating the business in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it, shifting from working in the business to on the business. For me, it was necessary because this was a second career. Part of my motivation in moving careers was I wanted nights and weekends back for my kids and my family. As we got more busy, my nights and weekends were still working. So I had to make the shift or I was going to miss my children's childhood and my marriage was going to be in jeopardy. So I had to make the very real mature choice to allow someone else to do it 80% as well as I thought I could so that I could work on the business. And the craziest thing happens, Liza, when you allow someone to do 80% as well as you and you celebrate them, the next time they do it, it's 90% as good as you. And you celebrate them and you empower them and you give them clarity. And now they're performing at 100%. And then you do it again. And now the guys kind of cringe when I put my tools on and rock up to the job site because they're like, oh no, he's just gonna like start cutting stuff because I miss it so much. But giving them some room, almost, I mean, realizing it now, almost like my dad did for me. I mean, they're much better than I was at 6, don't get me wrong. But in a way, I'm kind of carrying that on and encouraging them. No, you're capable of this. Listen, I know we've never framed a triple header before and we've never done a Simpson strong wall, but here's some, here's the videos that we subscribe to. You got this, like you're a craftsman. And then I gotta walk away or I'm gonna pick up the nail gun. And then I come at the end of the day and they've done it and the pride on their face and them showing the client what they, oh my gosh, that's such a win. Having the courage and the discipline to work on the business by getting out of the field, getting off tools, creating systems that empower the guys, knowing my numbers has been really good as much as I miss field work.
I love that. I love that attitude, and it's a great way to grow people and grow the team. And cards on the table for our listeners. Luke's a power user of House Pro, but the thing that I wanted to ask you about was more the mindset because often we run into businesses that find it hard to change or do things differently or don't want to disrupt for a little bit in order to get the gains that come from changing. When I hire people, I always tell them, hey, I'm hiring you for your brain. I'm not hiring you to do things the way we've always done them. That might just be expedient. And if you come across something that there's a better way to do it, please say something or please make a change because it's not necessarily the best way. And I'm kind of wondering what advice you have for folks that feel like I actually was presenting at a conference and a woman from Google had a great way of putting it, which she said, she talks to businesses and if things are bad, they're afraid to change anything or it's not the right time to make an investment. But then when things are good, they say, well, things are good. why should I change anything? And so her point was it's always a good time to try something new. And I'm curious, how you think about it and what you've seen in your experience. Where do
Yeah,
folks get stuck?
that's a great question. I guess I'll use this illustration because it's a bit of a stereotype, but I imagine many of your listeners are male business owners. But my wife does CrossFit and she's a beast, so maybe this will land for some of the women as well. When you're exercising, training, you're training your body, you want to maximize strain without injury. So you're always like you're kind of riding that line. You don't want to overtrain, but you want to know how far you can push it to maximize the gains or maximize their performance or maximize the weight loss or whatever your goals may be. And I think that is just kind of how I operate. And I'm going to strain the system until it almost breaks, until there's cracks in it, until there's stress fractures in it. And then we're going to figure out what those were. And we're either going to improve the system or we're going to add to it, or we're going to add some SOPs, or we're going to incorporate a meeting, or we're going to break this meeting from one meeting into two meetings because we end up talking about two categories of things every time we meet and it's confusing. So we continue to work on the business in strategic ways where it might be fracturing. And the leadership team unaffectionately has called me a rolling alligator. I just grab a hold of something and I just start spinning. And I know I need to work on it because I can be a bit hyper and overly focused. But when I see something that's not optimized or not good or not culturally relevant or not excellent, I'm not going to let that thing go until it's dead. So they get a little bit irritated with that, but I think the constant mission of improvement, it's a mindset. And I think there are some personal disciplines that drive the business disciplines. And if you remove the personal disciplines, the business ones will not last. I think it starts internally. It starts with the heart. It starts with who you are and why are you doing this. Everything else flows from that. And if it's not flowing from the heart, when it breaks, it could be catastrophic. There's nothing to fall back on. So I think it's an internal drive that presents itself in different ways. Not always healthy.
I love it. I mean, it's definitely an entrepreneurial mindset and an incredible mindset to have, and I think an important one to thrive and succeed. But I think it's also great that you've figured out how you build a team so that you don't personally break either, right? You pushed yourself, you pushed your family, right? But there still have to be some boundaries to make it all work. Yeah, I think this has been, incredibly inspiring and a great example of, you can build anything you want from scratch if you have enough passion and purpose and focus on delivering a great result.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many leadership books that I feel like have really, really helped me, but the one that you're reminding me of is Jim Collins' Good to Great. It's the flywheel concept. You think about this flywheel that's on a spindle or on an axle, and it's enormously heavy. It's just enormously heavy. But if you give it a little bit of push in the same direction consistently, all of a sudden that thing gets spinning and nothing can stop it. It might slow down a little bit for a day or two, but you put a little bit of pressure on it consistently. And I think a lot of people, especially in the business world, like we were talking about before with social media, everybody thinks that there's a magic bullet or a get rich quick, or there's one software, or there's just one click away from the big thing. But we know that the hard truth with anything in life that is of value, it's small, consistent effort in the same direction. And I feel like to some degree, I've been able to do that for 44 years with some inconsistencies. But for the most part, looking back, it was a little bit of a windy path. But looking back, I can see why there's a bit of momentum now. And it hasn't come just by me, but it's getting the right people around me and the right people in my corner. And it's the random friend that calls me and is like, hey, I was just thinking about you. I want to tell you you're amazing and you can do it. And if you're having a hard day, I want you to remember this voicemail. And I go back to those voicemails. And it's having a wife that I know, like, hey, we said we were gonna do this thing. Like, it's gotta work. I can't have a third career. Like, my midlife was changing careers. Like, I only get one midlife crisis. Let's let this one work. It's it's the other people around the country like yourself and other people at House and other builders around the country that we can call each other on the way home at 4:30 and be like, "It was a hell of a day." And we can say, "Yeah, me too." All of a sudden it's like, "Okay, well, we're gonna wake up tomorrow morning and we're gonna push that flywheel again." And that has made all the difference for me.
Having that community is so important. That support system is so important. And Luke, I thank you. I can't think of a better face for blue collar. If the goal is to elevate this and to change perception in our country and beyond, and as you said, make it noble to work with your hands and do these jobs, I can't think of a better person to represent the next generation of that
Thank you.
than you and your wife. So thank you for this inspiring conversation, and I think for your advice, and good to know we can call each other. And it was a hell of a day having a
Yes,
lot of those, right? I'm sure people are having a lot of those lately, but no, it's super great to have have something that you believe in and that helps people to keep you going
absolutely.
when you get tired. So
Yep.
thank you. You have a great day.
All right, you too, Liza. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
This series is brought to you by House Pro. To learn more about our best-in-class software for winning clients, managing projects, and simplifying your workflow, visit house.com/pro.